Hey, what is going on, guys? Thanks for checking out this video of my sports Gematria. In this video, I'm going to go over the NBA games for Monday, June 7th, 2021. I'm going to just show you quick highlights of both sides, and it's going to be up to you to determine who you think will win based on the numbers. I encourage you to add additional information on top of this if needed for you to feel confident in your own pick. And if for some reason you're curious to know who I'm picking in these games, you'll have to join my Patreon where my picks are always in writing, underlined, and italicized. For more information on that, please read the description of this video. I wish you guys the best of luck in your picks today. Let's go ahead and get into the games. First one up, we got the Bucks and the Nets for game 2. Brooklyn currently leads the series 1-0. And then we got game 1 for the Nuggets versus the Suns. On this side of the screen, I have what I call my daily numbers, date numerology, Gregorian calendar, and the Hebrew calendar. And on this side is what I call my game numbers. So the way it's structured here, I have the away team up top. This is their coach's record, their season record, postseason record. I have double time coach record here because this is his all-time coach record as a Bucks, and then this is his all-time coach record for his overall career. In the middle here is the head-to-head record between the two teams. And then at the bottom here is the home team, their coach's record, and season record, postseason record. Up here is some information about the game. It's game 2. Nets could either become 2-0 in the series, or Bucks can get revenge and even the score 1-1. This is the 46th NBA playoff game for this season, and home teams could either get their 24th win, or they could become 23-23 with the loss. Over here, I've also added, looking ahead, that in game 3, see the 3 and the 4, this will be game 3 and game 4. Game 3 would be the 51st NBA playoff game. Game 4 would be the 56th NBA playoff game if I counted it correctly, if I counted the schedule correctly, which could be helpful looking ahead at games. So as I already bringing in something new, a new element here. So game 3 is the 51st, will be the 51st NBA playoff game. This is the 46th NBA playoff game. Game 3 for these two would be the 51st. The Bucks could either get their 51st win in this game and head into the 51st NBA playoff game with 51 wins, or Bucks could sit on 50 and potentially get their 51st win for the season in game 3, which would have to be which just so happens to be the 51st NBA playoff game for the season. Today on the Hebrew Religious, there is 51 date numerology, so keep that in mind. But if you watched my first picks preview video on game 1, I talked about the number 32 and how it could have gone either way, really, because today is going to be the 158th day on the Gregorian. It's the Nets' 158th postseason game. And the Nets would either get their 32nd win in game 1, or they'd get their 32nd home win in game 2. They got it in game 1, and it makes me a little nervous for them in game 2. Not a lot, just because they did so well in game 1. But there are some numbers here for the Bucks, potentially. And so let's go through them, and then we'll go over some numbers for the Nets. So Bucks, first of all, we already talked about the 51, interchangeable. Bucks can get their 51st win today on the Hebrew Religious. 51 date numerology. Game 3 would be the 51st NBA playoff game. It's vice versa, though. They can always get that 51 in game 3. But it's the 3 seed versus the 2 seed, like 23 and or 32, however you want to look at it. If Bucks win this game, home teams become 23-23. It's the 2 seed versus the 3 seed. And they'll be 23-23 heading into the next game for the day, which would be another 3 seed and 2 seed game. But Bucks potentially could get their 23rd road win as they make the home teams become 23-23, as they get their 131st postseason win as a team, which is the 32nd prime number. They would become 3-2 head to head against the Nets for the season, like 32, as Nets sit on 32 home wins in their 158th postseason game. 32 sums to 158. It'll also be in the 158th day on the Gregorian. But it can swing the Nets' way as well. I mean, Nets could get their 83rd all-time head-to-head win against the Bucks. 83 is the 23rd prime number, and then the Nets would become 3-2 head-to-head against the Bucks. And then you would just not look at the 131 here or the 23 here. So it can work in the Nets' favor. Today does have 54 date numerology and 34 date numerology on the Gregorian. Nets could get their 54th win for the season. Bucks coach, he would get his 34th postseason loss for his career. So next game would be played on the 9th, I believe, or the 10th. Yeah, it's 3 days. So on the 10th is when game 3 is going to be played. 8, 9, 10. So if you go to the 10th, we see that this day has 114 date numerology on the Hebrew religious. Much like the 51 is interchangeable, game 3, this game here on this day is going to be the 51st NBA playoff game. Bucks can get their 51st win in game 3, or they can, along with their 114th all-time head-to-head win against the Nets, or they can get it in game 2, 51 and 114, and head into game 3 with 114 date numerology, which would be the 51st game. It's a little confusing, I know. This day also has 54 date numerology on the Hebrew religious, so Nets can get their 54th win on a day with 54 date numerology for the Gregorian, or a day with 54 date numerology on the Hebrew religious. It's interchangeable. The one thing that's not interchangeable about these numbers that could work in the Bucks' favor is if Bucks win game 2, their coach would sit on 295 all-time losses for his career heading into game 3, sitting on 51 wins for the season. The Bucks will. And game 3 is a day leaving 295 left on the Hebrew religious, a day with 114 date numerology, 54 date numerology. Bucks coach could be sitting on that 295 as they sit on that 114 in game 3, as they sit on their 51st win for the season in the 51st NBA playoff. So that would be like a future projection. Sounds confusing. It sounds like a lot. And even 51 connects to it being the 46th NBA playoff game, because 51 sums to 46. So in the 46th NBA playoff game, Bucks can get their 51st win and then go into the 51st NBA playoff game sitting on 51 wins. But yeah, I mean, this one seems all kind of confusing. I think I probably confused a lot of you in this one, just going over that stuff. But I just wanted to note that the 295, even though the 114 and the 51 for the Bucks are interchangeable, it can hit in game 2 or 3 or not at all. The only thing that's not interchangeable is the 295 for the coach, 295. Because if they lose game 2, he's going to have 296 all-time losses heading into this day on day with 295 left. So if he's going to have 295 heading into this day, they would have to win game 2. It would be the only way. Everything else is interchangeable for the Bucks, and the Nets could just win game 2 if they really wanted them to. Let's go back to the day 7. Outside of that, Bucks coach, he can sit on 19 postseason wins as a coach for the Bucks on January 7th, 6/7 or 67 the 19th prime. Also, it's the 86th day on the Hebrew religious. 19 sums to 86. Bucks coach, he would sit on 181 all-time wins as a coach for Bucks, the 42nd prime number, as the Bucks get their 142nd postseason loss. 42 sums to 142. So there's definitely numbers here for Bucks to lose game 2. Nets can sit on 89 postseason losses as a team, as they become 8-9 head-to-head against the Bucks. 89 is the 24th prime number, and the Nets can get the 24th home win for NBA teams. So there's definitely numbers here. And 24 is just a reflection of 42. And like I said, 42 sums to 142. And Bucks coach can sit on that 181, which is the 42nd prime, and they would get their 142 postseason loss. I think that's it for now. Alright, let's move on to the next game. I probably confused you guys in that game. I apologize. Nuggets and Suns. So we have another 3 seed and a 2 seed. It's the 192nd all-time head-to-head matchup between these two teams. The Suns coach still sits on 291 all-time losses. I say still because we saw them in Game 4 beat the Lakers, and the score summed to, it was 100. Suns won with 100 points. Lakers lost with 92 points. It summed to a total of 192 points. And the coach Suns sit on 291, and then they came back to the house and became 29-10 at home as their coach sat on 291. It was the 21st day of the 9th month on the Hebrew that day. So it looks like the 192 is still following the Suns coach. It being the 192nd all-time head-to-head matchup between these two teams. He can continue to sit on that 291. Suns are 29-10 at home. They can sit on that 10. This is the 10th postseason head-to-head matchup. I would think it'd be really interesting if the Suns become 35-10 at home for the playoffs. I mentioned this in one of my pick preview videos when I was doing a Laker game. I think it was Game 5 or Game 6. I think it was Game 5 because Game 5 was at home, and so that's when I brought it up. If Suns, because they became 29-10 at home, if Suns win basically 6 more games, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, they could become 35-10 at home for this season, and Suns sums to 35-10. And so if they do become 35-10 at home for the season, at the very least it puts them in the Western Conference Finals. Oops. Okay. Yeah, so if they win all their home games up until they get their 35th and become 35-10, I think at the very least that puts them in the Western Conference Finals. After what happens there, I don't know. But speaking of Western Conference sums to 192, and this might be why this number is following the Suns coach, why he's still sitting on that 291. Western Conference sums to 192. It also sums to 267, and at some point, I would imagine he's going to get his 267th all-time win for his career. He can get his 267 as he sits on 291. That basically means Suns are going to win 3 in a row against the Nuggets. That's just a theory. Doesn't mean I'm going to pick them in all 3 games, because I can make a theory that Suns win the first 2 and then lose the next 2. And we'll get into that one as well. But yeah, so at the very least, he's going to get 267 win. And I think at the very least, the Suns coach is going to get all the way up to 269. Why do I say that? 269 is the 57th prime number. This is the 75th NBA season. 57 is just a reflection of 75. And if he gets up to 269, obviously it puts him in the Western Conference Finals. Today does have 18 date numerology on the Gregorian. 18 sums to 143. Suns can continue to sit on 143 postseason losses as a team. It's the 47th NBA playoff game for this season. The number 47 sums to 121. And Nuggets can get their 121st postseason loss as a team, potentially. But for the Nuggets, Game 2 is going to be the 50th NBA playoff game. Game 3 is going to be the 54th NBA playoff game. Game 4 is going to be the 57th NBA playoff game. Now, this is where I would think Nuggets win at least 2 of the 4 games. I say that why? Because Suns, they're sitting on 55 wins coming into this game. They can get their 56th win, they can get their 57th win, and they can literally just sit on 57 all the way up until they play Game 4, and even in Game 4, which would be the 57th NBA playoff game. So that's a theory. So maybe if I stick to the Suns at least becoming 35 and 10 at home, that means Suns win at least the first two games, and then which would give them 57-23 record. And then in Denver, they just sit on that 57 in Game 3 and Game 4, which would be the 54th and the 57th NBA playoff game, potentially, maybe. That would be a theory as well. What's interesting about the Suns, if they win Game 1 and become 56 and 23, today does have 34 date numerology on the Gregorian, 34 does come to 56, but 5623 has mathematical properties. 5623. 5623 is the 739th prime number. 739 is the 131st prime number. 131 is the 32nd prime number. This is the 3 seed Denver Nuggets versus the 2 seed Phoenix Suns. It's actually a day where both games are the 3 seed versus the 2 seed. And Suns can become 56-23, sitting on 23 losses, 2 seed versus the 3 seed, as they become 56-23, which mathematically breaks down to the number 32, which is kind of interesting, I think. Hopefully this video is helpful. I don't know, I feel like I'm being really confusing. I feel like I'm kind of all over the place. My mind's just kind of, yeah. Let's look at date numerology for their next game. So Nuggets Suns game 1. I think they play I think they're the only ones on what is that, Wednesday? The 9th. So Wednesday, the 9th, game 2 has 56 date numerology. So does Suns go in with 56 wins, or do they lose game 1 and go in and get 56 win in game 2? If that happens, then this 56-23 connection doesn't hit. And then my 35-10 theory for the Suns equals 35-10 at home, definitely doesn't hit. And you can just throw it all out the window. It is the 29th day of the 3rd month on the Hebrew religious 29-3, and the Nuggets coach can continue to sit on 293 losses all time for his career. So that could definitely put a ruins to Suns becoming 35 and 10 at home right off the bat. Maybe they just become 29 and 11 at home in the 192nd as he bounces from 291 to 292. And then it would set him up to get his 293rd loss on the 29th day of the 3rd month as Nuggets coach sits on 293. Now that's interesting. That's interesting. There's potential there. There's a possibility. It will be the 88th day of the Hebrew religious. Nuggets would get their 88th all-time head-to-head win, either in game 1 or game 2 potentially. And if Nuggets go on an 0-2, they could go 0-2, yeah. Well, if they win game 1, they would head into the 88th day with 88 wins. But if they lose game 1, they can get their 88th win on the 88th day. But then that means the coach would be no longer sitting on 293, and the Suns coach would not be getting his 293. So that's kind of tricky there with that 88 and it being the 88th day and the 29th day of the 3rd month. What else? 56 day. Nuggets coach getting his 326. That's just an anagram of 263. 263 is the 56 prime number. So maybe he could go into game 2, 326, 293, a day with 56 date numerology, the 29th day of the 3rd month. So maybe they could win game 1. It's not impossible at all. It'll be a day with 20 date numerology. Maybe he goes in 2020 for a postseason record with the loss in game 1. There's a potential there. I'm gonna have to keep looking this over. There's a lot of different ways you can play with these numbers and come up with, with whatever scenario you kind of really want. I'm gonna continue to look this stuff over. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully this gives you a jumping off point of adding your own work on top of this, and hopefully it helps. Hopefully you get value out of it. Don't hesitate to ask any questions or comments and below. I try and answer them in a timely manner, but I'm more quick and I communicate way more on my Patreon. On my YouTube, the only time I really actually engage is when I'm uploading videos, and so which is basically about like once a day at the most. Well, appreciate it, guys. Hopefully this helps. Thanks for watching.